Hi everyone, welcome to Dataverse Academy. In this video, we'll be focusing on pipeline development for all those notebooks which we have created earlier and building the semantic model, and then we will generate an automated Power BI report on top of that. So for the data pipeline, we have created one folder, ingestion pipeline. Inside that, we have created all the pipelines. So let me click on this, and here you can see we have four pipelines. So I'll go to the one which is required for config. So this is the one which I've created for config, and it will run only once. So inside this data pipeline, you can see I'm calling four notebook. One is metadata notebook, one is DQ notebook, one is pipeline monitoring notebook, and another one is calendar table. So how you can call the notebooks from the data pipeline? Just select the notebook activity, and once you select it, you can rename it here. And inside the setting, you can select the workspace in which your notebook is, and then select the notebook name. So this is the metadata config notebook which we have created to put the entry in our config table. Then the second one is DQ. So this is the one which we have created for DQ, and then we did entry in that particular DQ table. And this one is just for creating the pipeline monitoring table. The last one is calendar table, which we need to create in a prepare layer. So this calendar notebook is creating a calendar table in a prepare layer. So let me show you the calendar one, because all these three we have already discussed. Only the calendar one is left. Here you can see a calendar table. In this notebook at the top, you can see I'm importing some functions and some data types, and I'm just providing the date range from start date and end date. You can make this dynamic as per your data need, but for now I have made this one as static. So I know my data is from 1st of January 2024 to 31st of December 2025. So that's why I've selected this range, but you can make it dynamic as per your need. And then I'm just using the explode function to find out the number of days between start date and end date. Then I'm using the explode function, and here you can see what exactly I'm doing. I'm just creating a date column with the range between these two dates. So it will create from 1st January to 2024 to till uh, 31st December 2025. So it will create a column with those particular dates, and on top of that uh, date range data frame, like it will be a data frame, and I'm creating multiple columns, like what is the day number, what is the day name, hour, weekend. These are all the columns which I need to create in my calendar table, and these are some different functions which I'm using, like date format, and then date of year, week of year. So different format I'm using for each column. Here you can just copy this code and write it in your notebook. And then I also needed to add few more columns: day ago date, month ago date, quarter ago date, year ago date. And then here it's daytime, whether it's a weekend or weekday. And let's suppose if you have any holiday calendar information, then you can write down inside this holiday name. I don't have anything, so that's why I put it as none, so it will be blank. And here weekend end date. And after preparing all these column, I'm just writing into the prepare layer as a calendar table. Okay. Now let me go to my config pipeline. So we are just calling all these particular notebooks inside our PL config pipeline, and we just need to run only once this one. So let me quickly run it. And as we have already inserted the data, but it just override that particular data. And let me just quickly run it. and then we'll verify the data as well. So in the output, you can see when your notebook has been run successfully. So here you can see our pipeline has been completed successfully. Now we'll verify the data in the Lakehouse table. So now let me click on my workspace and then we'll move to the Lakehouse. This is our Lakehouse. Inside the Lakehouse, first we'll check our config schema. So these all schema has been recreated. I can just quickly refresh it. And inside the config, you can see we have these three tables. And we'll check the data one by one. First, I'll check the data in the rules config. You can see we have four rows inside our DQ config, and as we have inserted only four rows on like four different role IDs on top of transaction table. Now let me check the metadata. Yeah, you can see the data into our metadata table as well, whatever we have inserted here through that notebook. Then we have pipeline monitoring table, and that will be blank as we have just created this pipeline monitoring table. Yeah, you can see it's completely blank. Now I'll check the prepare schema and we'll check the calendar table. You can see this is our calendar table. And let's check the data inside the calendar table. So these are the different columns which we have created. Date, date number, date name, R is blank, then workday sequence, then week of month, week of year, different columns which we have created here. Okay, so those will be useful when we are going to create the Power BI dashboard. Now let me close the pipeline as well as my calendar notebook and the lakehouse also. Now we'll move to the another pipeline which we have created to move the data from file to raw, then raw to clean. So it's inside the ingestion pipeline folder. This is the pipeline which we have created to move the data from file to raw and raw to clean. So here you can see we have lookup and for each activity, and inside for each activity we are calling file to raw and raw to clean. So inside the lookup, I have written the query which we have discussed earlier while creating the config metadata. So inside the query, you can see I have just copy pasted that particular query which we have discussed earlier, where we'll take the key name as column name and value as data from the config metadata table. So we are just taking type, file name, file format, delimiter, raw schema, clean schema, load type, key column, watermark value, merge script for raw and clean. So I'll like created this connection to our SQL endpoint, and we'll show you like how we have created this connection to the SQL endpoint. So at the top, you will see this setting button. Just click on that and then click on manage connections and gateway. And then click on new. And here you need to choose cloud. And you can give the name to your connection, anything, whichever you want to give. So I'll give like new connection to SQL endpoint. And I'll just show you how you can create it because I've already created this connection LQM Lakehouse SQL endpoint, and here you need to select Azure SQL manage instance, and here you need to provide the server detail which is your connection string for the SQL endpoint, and this is the database name which is the Lakehouse name. So we'll take the connection string of our lakehouse. So here you can see your lakehouse, and this is lakehouse SQL endpoint. So when you click on this ellipse at the below, you can see copy SQL connection string. So click on that and copy it. Then go to the connection manager and paste it here. And here you need to provide your Lakehouse name, which is this one, LQM Lakehouse, LQM Lakehouse, and then you need to choose the authentication. So you can choose either OAuth and service principal. So we'll choose OR 2.0, which is kind of an access where your user will have the access to that particular SQL string. Then only you will be able to create that connection, and then also you will be able to access that data from that particular SQL endpoint. Otherwise, if you don't have the access, you will not be able to access it. So let's suppose if the admin create this connection, and then he needs to provide the access to that particular connection to you or to your team. And another way is using service principal. So the admin has to create the service principal uh, inside the Azure portal, and then that service principal will have the access to the Lakehouse. So right now we'll use OR 2.0. Then here you need to click on that edit credential and choose your user. Then your connection will be created, and then you can close this. Okay, then you can click on create and close this. So this is what I've done here as well in this. So you can see this is still uh, running. Like you can test it after creation whether it's running or not. So just check the status. Now I'll go back to my pipeline and we'll preview the data, like what exactly the data this query is returning. Here you can see we have table name, type, yeah, it's a file type. Then what's the file name, file format, then what's the delimiter, it's comma, and what's the schema, raw schema, clean schema, and load type. So in case of full load, we'll not have all these columns, but in case of incremental load, you can see we have these columns, and we'll use this particular data to pass that particular information to our notebook. So we'll go to the for each, and inside the for each, you can see I'll run like this is sequential and this is batch. So if you want to run the pipeline for each table one by one, then you can select sequential. If you want to run the pipeline for multiple tables at once, so I'm running for 5 tables at once. So that's why I provided the batch count as 5. Then here you need to provide this particular thing, which is, so if I go here, which is this one, lookup data config output, then you need to choose the value. So whatever the data which we have seen in the lookup preview, that everything will be stored inside this value variable. Okay, so we need to pass that particular data to our for each activity. Once that particular data has been passed, we can use that data inside our for each activity to pass the inner activity. So if I go inside the for each, you can see I've created these two notebook, and inside the first notebook, which is file to raw, I'm calling my file to raw notebook, and also and passing these parameters which we have created earlier. So if you remember, at the starting we have created the parameters in our file to raw notebook. So I'll quickly show you. So this is our file to raw notebook, and inside this you can see these are the parameters which we need to pass from the pipeline. So these are all the parameters which we are passing from here for each table. Table name, file format, delimiter, raw schema, lakehouse, target schema, monitoring table, system, lakehouse, uh, source location, archive location. So these are coming from my for each. You can see item dot table name. If I just click on this one, so you can see for each. So whenever you just click on this for each, you will see it will give you this particular information, which is this one item. Then from this particular batch of information which is inside this item area, you need to choose the specific one. So I'm choosing the table name. Okay, let me just remove this. And for file name also I'm choosing this one, file format, delimiter, and raw schema. But here you can see these are some variables which we are choosing from the pipeline. Okay, So these are some variables which we have created at the pipeline level. So now let me show you those variables before going further. Let me go to the main canvas, and here I'm using the library variables. So on the main pipeline you can see library variables, and these are the variables which I've created in my library. So which is Lakehouse name, uh, like raw table schema, clean table schema. These are all the variables which I've created in the uh, library variables, and I've assigned the value inside that only. So let me show you the library variable. So let me click on my lake house, and then let me go back, and here you can see which is variable library. Okay, so I'll click on this one just to show you, assign the value. So these are some variables which I've created, like workspace ID and lakehouse ID. So these are not required. These two are not required. You don't need to create these. But the below ones are required, like lakehouse name, config schema, uh, config table, monitoring table, and source location, archive location. So these are all the variables which are required. How you can create the variable library? So let me go to the workspace, and here just click on new item and select variable library. So just click on this, and then you can give any name to it. Once you give the name, you will move to this particular window where you will not have any variable. So you need to click on this new variable, then a variable will be created for you, and then you need to assign the name to it. And if you want to assign any default value to it, you can assign the default value. So I have created these some important variable which I'm going to use in the pipeline while passing the node to the notebook. So which is Lakehouse name, which is my LPM Lakehouse config schema, this one config table, metadata, monitoring table, which is pipeline monitoring, source location, which is LQM lending, archive location, LQM archive, raw table schema, which is raw, clean table schema, prepare table schema, DQ table, system, which is Coupa, workspace name, this is our workspace name. Um, so I've created these particular variables. Now let me close this variable library. And how I have used this one. So once you go to the library variables inside the pipeline activity, you can click on new, and then you need to give name to your variable. So let's suppose if I select Lakehouse ID, you can give any name to it, and then select LQM variables. This is the variable library which we have created, and you need to select the from variable from the variable library, which is Lakehouse ID. Okay, so this is how I have assigned the value to these variables. So these are the variables which are created here in pipeline, and these are the variables which are coming from my variable library, and I'm assigning the value from variable library to my variables which I've created in the pipeline. So now let me just delete this because this was extra which I created just to show you, and we'll go to the notebook again. So I'm just passing those values. So how you can like pass the value to this variable, and how you can create it, just click on new, and then you will be created. Just give the name. So the name should be same whatever the variable name you have created in the notebook. Those variable names should be same. If you pass anything other than that, you will see a failure in your notebook. Why? So let's suppose if I'm creating this raw schema variable, and inside my notebook I'm using this variable somewhere. Okay, maybe yeah here, and if I pass here raw underscore schema, so this variable will have blank value, because here if I pass this as raw underscore schema, so we are not passing to the main variable, right? We have created a different variable and we are not using that. So to this variable you will receive null value, and you will see a failure here. So the variable name should be same whichever you are using in your pipeline. Then just give the name and select the type, and then you can click on this add dynamic content, and you can either choose from your for each or from library variables, and then select this particular variable which we have created in the pipeline. So now let me just delete this, and then we'll go to route to clean notebook which I have created, and I've just selected the workspace and route to clean notebook, and these are the parameters which I'm passing to the raw to clean notebook, just like file to raw. These are different variables. These are two variables whose values is coming from for each, like this one also, this one, this one, this one, and these three and these one are coming from variable library. So the reason for creating the variable library is, so there can be like common variables which can be used in multiple pipelines. So that's the reason which I've created those variables. Otherwise, I had to create those variable and assign value to those variables in each pipeline. You can create those variables in the variable library and assign it, and then you can use it in multiple pipelines. So that's the use of the variable library. Now let me click on main canvas, and then I'll close this pipeline, and then we'll move to the next pipeline. So the next pipeline which we have is uh, clean to prepare load. Same process which we are following in the clean to prepare load as well. In clean to prepare load, if you remember, we have created the views at the clean layer on the top of the tables using a notebook. So I had to call that particular notebook first before loading the data from clean to prepare, because the data will become with the help of the views only. So this is the notebook which I created to call those views, and just selected the workspace and the notebook of the and the name of that particular notebook, which is views. Then inside the lookup activity, I'm doing the same thing which I've done in file to raw and raw to clean, but just change the condition only, tire condition to prepare, and I need only table name, load type, key column, watermark value, and watermark column. So I'll show you what data this query is returning, and we are using the same SQL connection. Okay, you can see customer, entity, location, subsidiary, transaction, and a transaction view. The one which we have created is an incremental. Other than that, every view will be kind of a full loop. Okay. Now inside this for each activity, I'm again passing whatever the information which I got from lookup to the clean to prepare notebook, and inside this for each, I'm just calling clean to prepare notebook, and I'm passing these parameters: table name, lakehouse name, source schema, target, all these variables. Okay. Now let me just close this one. Then we have created a single pipeline which will call these two pipeline in a particular order. First, this pipeline will be called. Once the load is done, then this pipeline will be called. So here you can see this is PL underscore LQM load. And here I'm using the invoke activity. So just click on the activities. Here you can see the invoke activity which you can use to call a pipeline inside another pipeline. So once you choose an invoke activity, this one which we are using to call file to raw and raw to clean pipeline, you can see here. So you need to create a connection for that. So to create a connection, again you need to go to the manage connection, and there you can choose the fabric data pipelines, and then you can use that particular connection. Otherwise, you can create it from here itself. When you click on more, you can see this fabric data pipeline, and you can choose that, and I've already created this connection, that's why it's already picking it. Otherwise, you need to fill those details, and then you can click on connect. Or the other way I've already explained, you need to go to manage connection, and then their connection you need to choose fabric data pipelines. Okay. Now let me go back and cancel this. Then you need to choose the workspace and the pipeline which you want to call. We are calling file to raw to clean. In another invoke activity, we are calling the clean to prepare load. So this is all about our data pipelines which we are going to use in this current project. Now we'll move to the semantic model. Now let me close this pipeline and then we will load the data uh, into our ADLS location and we will run the pipeline which will take the data from file to raw, then we'll archive the files to the archive location, and then it will load the data from raw to clean and then clean to prepare layer. So now let me close this, and to put the data to your ADLS location, what we can do, we can open our Lakehouse, and from the Lakehouse itself, we can load the data to our ADLS location. So this is the shortcut which we have. Now we will upload the files into this ADLS location through shortcut. So right click on that and upload files, and click on this icon. So I have data inside these two folders. So inside this I have 2024 and inside that I have 2025. Before so I'll load the data of 2024 first, and then we'll load the data of 2025 data. Upload. All the files has been uploaded successfully. You can see customer, transaction, and all those. Those have been loaded to the ADLS location from the sort. Now we will run our file to raw and raw to clean pipeline, or maybe we can run the whole pipeline at once, whichever works for you. To run the whole pipeline at once, you can simply go to the ingestion pipeline and run this PL LQM load. First, it will load the data from file to raw, raw to clean, and then clean to prepare. So here you can see our file to raw to clean is running. If I click on this, and at the bottom you can see monitoring URL. You can click on this, and so here you can see file to raw to clean and its monitoring status. It is loading the data one by one. So if I give an example, first it has loaded the data of subsidiaries, then different tables, entity. Now we'll move back to the main pipeline and we'll close this and we'll wait once this is completed and also our clean to prepare is completed, then we'll verify the data. Our file to raw to clean load is completed and clean to prepare load is running. Here you can see our load is completed successfully. Now we'll verify the data. So for that we need to go to the lakehouse. So here you can see our lakehouse, and inside that this is the location where we have placed our files. Let me refresh it, and you can see those has been archived to this particular location. And now let me verify the raw data. Let me just refresh this, and here you can see all the tables has been created and we can verify the data. So I'll verify the data in the transaction table. You can see the data, and now let me verify in transaction line. Both these table are of incremental load, and let me verify any one of the full load table. You can see the data into the customer table, and here you can see we have added these columns from our side, which is row number and sys file timestamp, and when that record has been inserted and from which file it has been inserted. And now we'll go to the prepare layer. Let me refresh it. You can see at the prepare layer we have applied the DQ checks. That's why for each table, two table has been created, main table and quarantine table. And we just applied the DQ check on our transaction table. So we'll check the quarantine data for transaction. Now let me just check the customer. You can see we have the data. Now I'll check transaction table. Then we'll check the quarantine of transaction table as well. So we have 190 records in transaction main table, and I'll check the quarantine table. So 62 record has been quarantined. So if I go to the raw layer and show you the record count, which is 252. So in our main table in clean layer, 190 record has been moved and 62 record has been moved to the quarantine table. The reason behind it, you can check the whole record and at the last issue summary. So if I hover over any of the issue, invalid domain name in transaction type and null found in due date. So if we check the domain name which is deposit and which is not allowed, and due date is also blank. So that's the reason these record has been moved to quarantine table. Now we can check the data into the prepare layer. Let me refresh this. And here you can see all the tables. We'll check the data in the transaction first and then later in any one of the full load table. You can see we have the data in the transaction. So this is the combination of transaction line, transaction table and transaction accounting. Okay. Now we'll move to any one of the full load. You can see the customer ID and customer name. Okay. So now I'll close data pipeline and then we'll build the semantic model. So to build the semantic model, click on new semantic model and then select the tables which you want to use in the semantic model. So I need to create the semantic model on top of prepare layer. So I'll select all the tables because I need all the tables. Otherwise, you can decide one by one, and I'll decide the name. So I'll give the name as LQM semantic model and will click on confirm. Our semantic model is created here, and now we can decide the relationship between these tables. So now we will build the relationship between these tables. So click on manage relationship and create new relationship here. So I'll select calendar and my transaction table, and I'll create a relationship of date and here transaction date, this one. Now it is determining the cardinality which is many to one, and let me save it. Then we'll create relationship between other tables as well. Let me create it quickly. Customer and transaction. So based on customer ID, which will be based on entity. And now between entity and transaction table, which is again based on ID and entity ID. Save it. New relationship between item and transaction based on item ID. Save it. then location and transaction based on location ID. Okay, save it. Then based on uh, subsidiary, it will be based on subsidiary ID between location table and subsidiary table. The last relationship between vendor and transaction. It will be based on vendor ID, and I think we need to create it based on entity ID, because the entity ID decide whether it's a customer or entity or a property or vendor. Same ID is used for all three. Now let me close it and let me click on refresh, and here you can see our model has been designed successfully. And let me move the subsidiary here. Okay, and let me check one thing: type of the transaction date, which is I'll make it as short date, and same in the calendar table. Okay, and it has been saved. Now what you can do, you can go back, either you can start building the report on top of this only. What I'll do, I'll close this and will show you that our model has been created. Let me click on workspace, and here you can see our model has been created successfully. So if you want to create the report on top of that, you can use the Power BI desktop, but here as I'm using Mac, so I'm not going to use it. I'm directly going to create an automated report on top of that. So in this video we are not going to focus more on how you can build the Power BI report and all that stuff. I will be just simply showing you building the semantic model and building the automated report on top of that. So let me click on this model. Then what I'll do, I'll click on file and create new report. And here we are not going in detail about how you are going to create the report. I'll just simply show you like how you can build some KPIs and all that stuff. So let's suppose if I want to build a card, just click on that particular card and just pull like how many transactions are there. So based on transaction ID, you can find out number of transactions. So we'll simply pull it here and you can see the count. Okay, 727, and you can change the title whatever you want to do it here. Okay, which is transaction count. Now I'll simply go and create one maybe bar chart or line chart, and where I'll go into the calendar table and simply pull month here. Now I'll pull in the amount credit so that we can find out how much amount has been credited each month. So I just created only these two figures. You can build report on top of this data. I'm not going in detail, so you can simply save this report, and then you need to choose the workspace, and then you can give name to your report. Welcome report, and just save it. Now we can go back to the workspace, and let me close the semantic model. Let me click on workspace, and here you can see a report has been created successfully. So whenever the data has been moved to the Lakehouse prepare layer, and once you see the report, it will automatically get populated to your report, and there is no need to refresh your model or anything, because the data in this model is keep on coming from your tables directly. So this will keep on providing the data to your semantic model at runtime, and that will be reflected to your report. That's it in this video. Thank you. Please like and subscribe, and in case of any suggestion on improvement or in case of any doubt, comment.